This was a person who dropped out of A-levels and lived in a time where he got into deep depression and at some times felt suicidal as well. So where are you in your studies now?
Well, I particularly revere the Bhagavad Gita. I've already mentioned it once.
David, one Sanskrit shlok that really inspires or drives you when you are sad.
Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityur ma mritangamaya.
This is India, a story in the making, and I'm your host Lavina Tandon.
Namaskar, hello and welcome once again to India, a story in the making. Today I'm in conversation with an extremely interesting and inspiring person. This was a person who dropped out of A-levels and lived in a time where he got into deep depression and at some times felt suicidal as well. He went on to become a guru, and a Sanskrit guru at that. He's the one responsible for teaching Sanskrit at St. James and setting up the GCSE for Sanskrit. What an incredible journey must he have had. And that's what I want to discuss with him today. David Stollar. Yes, an Englishman who's interested in Sanskrit. Why? That's what I want to know and much more from him, as you will discover when we speak together. And I am, instead of sitting in a restaurant or a hotel, which I usually do, I'm sitting in his study, which is color coordinated. Thank you for your time, David, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lavina, and very nice to be with you.
So, and he has given me the permission to call him David.
Yes, it's my name.
Instead of Mr. Stollar.
Oh,
that's
yes.
what I meant.
Well, you're not one of my pupils.
Oh, I could be.
Yes, you're very welcome
Then
to
I'll
me.
call you Mr. Stollar.
Maybe.
Or Guruji.
I don't think that's appropriate, but thank you.
Okay, first, there's so much to talk to you about, but I do want to talk about this color coordinated library where we are sitting. My father had thousands of books, and he used to get up in the morning and clean each one of them. And you have gone a level ahead and made it color coordinated. Why?
Well, I am an artist by temperament or character, and I just don't like being surrounded by mess. And the average bookshelf is a mess. And so I like to arrange things so that they go together in a tidy way. And then perhaps I got a bit over the top with it and arranged all my books by colour. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm able to find the books I want.
That was my question as to, usually it'll be subject-wise or
Yes.
theme-wise,
Yes.
but you've done it colour-wise.
Yes, yes. Well, I have to remember what colour the books are that I have. And after 50 years of collecting, I don't always remember.
This is incredible, actually. It's absolutely incredible. And have you read each one of them?
Oh no, I've read a good proportion of them,
Right.
but many of them are for reference.
Ah, yes, of course, for what you... What a fascinating story, David, for someone who drops out of A-level.
Yes, I would. If you had told me when I was a boy that I'd become a teacher, I wouldn't have believed you. It would have been an incredible idea.
Tell me your story. And why the depression? What was happening in the times? You said you were in the 60s.
Yes,
And it
well,
was happening a lot, you told me.
so I didn't go forward in my school because I was badly behaved and I didn't work hard and I didn't get many exams, and so they told me they didn't really want me back in the sixth form. Luckily, at that stage I had discovered that I had this artistic talent, and so I managed to get a place in an art school in London. I went ahead, I was the youngest person there, and what happened was I did a year's what's called pre-diploma, and I couldn't go on to the diploma course because I was too young. So I had a year to kick my heels. That was fatal. I did take some odd jobs, but really I got more and more depressed, and my depression was really a metaphysical depression. I couldn't see the purpose of life.
Wow.
I couldn't see why people used to get up in the morning and go to work. It just didn't make any sense to me. And I got more and more depressed. Luckily, I had a friend who recommended me to a philosophy course, an evening class, and he said, come along to the beginning of term lecture with me, see if it helps you at all. So I went along, and it did help me. It revealed to me what the purpose of life is. This was a school which was following at the time the teaching of George Gurdjieff, who not many people have heard of. But his scheme of the universe and of the purpose of humankind did hit the right spot. And in a way, I never looked back after that.
So how quickly could you get out of your existential crisis and stopped feeling suicidal after attending this class?
Well, that's a sensitive question, because in one sense, it still lingers. I'm still searching for the purpose of life, ultimate purpose of life. There's still a hole in my inside which is waiting to be filled, which is nearly full.
Okay, nearly full. We are
Nearly
there.
full,
We are there.
and each week it gets better and better.
So how does this connect to you learning Sanskrit and then teaching it?
Right. Well, this school of philosophy, which was following the teachings of George Gurdjieff, was looking for a method in order to help their practice. And at just that very time, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi came to London. He was the guru of the Beatles, people might have heard of him, with a system called transcendental meditation. We tried that out, found it useful, and started to help him to spread his word. At the same time, the leaders of our school wanted to find out what the root of his tradition was. They went to India and they discovered that he had a fellow disciple. They had a teacher who they called Guru Dev, and the fellow disciple of Maharishi was the Shankaracharya of the North, which is a very high position in Hindu society, a little like the Pope. Anyway, we went along and we met this man and we compared notes with him, and we found that he was a very wise man. And we started taking instruction from him. In his instruction, he often used Sanskrit words because there weren't English equivalents. At a certain point, our leader asked him whether it would be useful for us to learn Sanskrit. And he was very keen on the idea, and we took it up. Not so many people were as keen as I was. I found it very beautiful. And being an artist, I found the script very beautiful. The Devanagari script, as well as the sounds are beautiful and the things that were said in Sanskrit were beautiful. So it was altogether beautiful. And I used to spend a lot of my spare time studying it. Not many other people were doing this, so I soon began to gain positions in the Sanskrit faculty that we set up, and eventually came to teach in the day schools that we set up for our children. And I volunteered to write a Sanskrit course for the children, which was ideal for me because I didn't know that much, and I could learn evening by evening before the next day when I'd teach it, and then I'd work out what to do the day after that. And I wrote a course, and I had to teach many other teachers because the school was growing and there were a lot of children needed teachers. So that we had to write exams, we had to see that they could be publicly taken, and the school I taught at is still teaching Sanskrit. Meanwhile, I've retired, but I do teach Sanskrit. I've got about 6 or 7 groups that I take on Zoom,
Yeah.
which sort of came in during the COVID area, and I started gaining pupils from all over the world. I even had a pupil from China.
Really?
Used to join me on a Saturday morning, yes.
So when you started the class, who were these bunch of people who went to the Shankaracharya of the North and wanted to learn that
Yes,
philosophy?
well, this was a philosophy school for adults that had met for many, many years and was looking, as they would have phrased it, they're looking for the truth.
The truth. Okay,
At
and that's
first,
why...
they were looking for the truth about economics, and it was called the School of Economic Science. But they realized that in order to understand economics, you've got to understand human nature. And to understand human nature, you've got to understand what a human being is. And then one thing led to another, and eventually to the Vedantic teaching.
To Shankaracharya and to Sanskrit
exactly.
and to reading and learning Sanskrit. How phenomenal is that?
Well, it's
so it's
very
actually
beautiful.
quite at the root. So call it economics, call it marketing, call it anything. It's actually human beings. Somewhere I feel we are in this whole world of technicality, which is helping us, also losing that essence.
Yes,
of-
and on that subject, Sanskrit is, well, many people think, in India anyway, that Sanskrit is the original language, and that may well be true, but science tends to think that it's a language which is, there is a word, I've forgotten what it is, anyway, very close sister language to many other languages, including English,
Yes.
because English comes from Latin and German, and Latin and German are related to Sanskrit, as are Russian, Lithuanian, strangely enough, Persian. Many languages are brothers and sisters to Sanskrit.
Yes, of course.
So you can trace any English, well, most English words back to a Sanskrit root.
Yes.
So and Sanskrit offers clues as to the nature of a human being. So if you're
Really?
studying Sanskrit, studying the Bhagavad Gita, which I will always mention again and again, you are learning about our true nature. And it's contained in the Sanskrit language.
Brilliant. But what is it that you found through Sanskrit or through that philosophy which appealed to you to get on with your life?
Right, well, there's so many aspects to this, but one of the teachings that I walked into when I walked into this school at that stage was that most people are, as it were, asleep. They're not aware of their own faculties, and most of the time they're not even aware that they're alive because they're locked in thoughts in their mind. So you have to find a way of reducing the amount of thought and beginning to be aware of what's around you and strengthening those parts of your mind that are able to go quite deep, because we live a superficial life, but deep in each person there is something which is eternal, and that's what the Bhagavad Gita tells us about, and that's what I've devoted my life, whenever I remember, to.
What is that eternal?
What is that eternal? Well, it's called the Atman in Sanskrit.
The soul, the consciousness.
Yes, consciousness, happiness.
The clutter that we have of thoughts in our head and the stability that, or the calm you felt when you entered to say, you can get rid of this clutter is what hooked you. Am I right?
Yes, I'm not sure you can get rid of it. It's always there under the surface,
Yes.
but you don't have to take much notice of it.
Yes.
And to aspire to something greater is possible.
Wonderful. Now, you actually have set up the syllabus that my children are today learning. We can say St. James.
Yes,
You were teaching at Sanskrit at St. James.
that's right.
And you started pretty much, actually not started, but pretty much you told me, I would say, structured it
Yes.
to the level that it is. My children, yesterday I'm interviewing you, said, oh, that name is on my book. He's written the book I am reading and studying. So tell me about how the school, which is quite English, got attracted to Sanskrit. Tell me about the school and
The School of Philosophy that I mentioned, which turned into a school of Vedanta by meeting the Shankaracharya, there were thousands of people in this school. There was a great interest at that time, and we weren't satisfied with the state education because it was too limited. We wanted a better education for our children, so we decided, quite an adventurous thing to do, to set up our own school, which would teach all the normal things, plus Sanskrit, plus meditation, plus philosophy. And yes, but although we said we were going to teach Sanskrit, we did set up the school, which was a lot of hard work. We said we were going to teach Sanskrit, but nobody knew any Sanskrit.
Yes.
So I volunteered, as I said, and had to make a course. I based this course on the great stories, the great epics of Ramayana and Mahabharata, because I knew that if you're going to teach children, you need stories. And so that's how the course was arranged.
So in St. James, the school was already up and running. They had interest in running ancient languages, and you said you ran Sanskrit.
Yes.
How would you get the children who were so young and parents who were not connected to India or Sanskrit in any way to get them interested into?
Oh, well, it's delightful. It's the delightful sounds in Sanskrit, and children are full of faith and trust. If you tell them something is magic, and I'm talking young children, you say, this is magic, oh, they're on with you, whatever it is. It can be something terrible, but it wasn't. It was Sanskrit. And Sanskrit was always a children's language. The children would learn to recite hundreds of sutras when they're young. They naturally can do it. Children are natural imitators. They hear a funny sound, they'll imitate it. So that wasn't difficult.
No wonder that our own whole the Sanskrit and everything is written in a certain meter, and it has a sing-song to it.
Yes.
So where are you in your studies now?
Well, I particularly revere the Bhagavad Gita. I've already mentioned it once. And I run courses with adult pupils. We go through the whole of the Bhagavad Gita in 2 years. It's 700 verses, and we go through every verse in Sanskrit. Now, first of all, I have to teach people Sanskrit up to exam level. So most of my pupils for the Bhagavad Gita have been with me on the IGCSE course and taken the exam. Doesn't really matter how well or badly they did, because they've covered the course. And then we can look at the Bhagavad Gita, and each verse of the Bhagavad Gita is just brimful of wisdom. And this is what I like to do. As you said, this is where I am. I also teach the Panini system. That's a bit more technical. I'll only talk about Panini if you ask me specifically, because it's complicated.
How have you got to a level where you can teach? So what all did you have to learn on the way, and who all from?
Well, I did have help all the way along. I went to the Bhawan in North Kensington, and I got friendly with Nanda. I think he's still there, but maybe
Nanda Kumarji runs the Bhavan, the culture hub, and he's
That's
doing
right.
a brilliant job of it.
That's
here
right.
in London, in High Street, Kensington, near High Street, Kensington, or West Kensington.
Yes,
somewhere.
West Kensington.
West
That's
Kensington,
right.
sorry, yes.
I used to go to lessons with him. I made it a point of studying all the Sanskrit courses in books that were available. So each one takes a different line, and I got a sort of full picture.
Wow.
There was Teach Yourself Sanskrit, which was good in some ways. There was the London University Sanskrit course, which I got hold of, etc., etc. And also we were learning this Panini system in the School of Philosophy. So I got a very nice all-round education in Sanskrit without ever having to go to India. People are always surprised when I say I've never been to India.
So there is Sanskrit available so much outside of India.
Yes, that's right. So I did, in one sense, I taught myself out of sheer enthusiasm.
My God, and how many years have you done that for?
Well, since I was about 26, and I'm now 78, and I continue to learn. What was I going to say? Yes, one of the most notable points in my education in Sanskrit was when I discovered a very lovely hymn called The Thousand Names of Vishnu from the Mahabharata.
Vishnu Sahasranam.
That's the one. And I studied each name. It's in the first case, singular, mainly masculine. You don't need to know any grammar, but you can learn about the roots of the language. Each Sanskrit word has a root called a dhatu. And for these 1,000 names, there was a commentary by the original Shankaracharya. So I studied these names with great delight. It's full of mythology, it's full of philosophy, and it's full of beauty. And that was a major step in my education, because I connected with what's called the bhavana of the language, the sense of devotion and beauty which goes through it. And that's all there in those names. And it's rather funny, because in my grammar classes I was doing, the particular grammar book we were studying from the 15th century, I think it is, the person that wrote it was a devotee of Vishnu himself, particularly Krishna. And all the examples he gives are names of Vishnu, most of them. So I used to sit in these classes beaming away with delight at these names, and they thought I was beaming away at the delight in the grammar. So they gave me more and more classes to take, everybody's, to convey my enthusiasm.
What is the name that appeals to you most of Vishnu?
Oh dear me, very difficult. Sharada, refuge. There are
speaks
1,000.
to you the most.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I don't know how to single it out. Prasada, I'm not sure that is one of his names, but it's certainly a word in Sanskrit that always delights me.
Prasad.
Prasad, it has many meanings. You will know it as the food you take in the temple after it's been offered. But it means clarity, it means grace. It's a beautiful word.
Is that the word that, by many of many,
yes,
that you love?
Exactly. That's one of the words I love.
Oh, fantastic. But we live in the world today, David.
Yes, indeed.
And we do have to think of our car
Indeed,
insurances.
yes.
Now, how do we calm our mind while we have to think of car insurances?
Right. Well, the school of philosophy, which began taking instruction from His Holiness the Shankaracharya, they were following this path towards the inner self. And this reality and the way to find it is spoken of, sung of, if you like, in these ancient works called the Upanishads, as well as the Bhagavad Gita, and it is stated there so simply that it goes right in and very powerfully in the Sanskrit. So in English, it's just a translation.
It loses the charm. It loses the charm and the
loses
full meaning.
The power.
Power.
Yes.
It's the language which has got the power to say exactly what. Yeah. So the meaning is lost in translation.
So this teaching of the Atman was discovered thousands of years ago, and it was spoken in Sanskrit.
Yes, and
so that you're getting something that is from the dawn of mankind, when men and women were much simpler and much clearer in their appreciation. For instance, we get up in the morning, do we think, what a wonder it is to be alive? Or do we think, I wonder if I've renewed my car insurance? You know, they're different worlds, aren't they? So when you're looking at the Upanishads, you're not looking at them. When you're hearing the Upanishads, you're hearing a call from the earliest days of humankind, when they were much more aware of what life was really about. That is my conviction.
How amazing.
So that's why people join together in groups to support each other. And that's quite important. It's very difficult to do it on your own. But if you do it together, and if you've got somebody who's more experienced who can teach you a bit, then it's possible to do that. And people have done this forever in all countries. It's not very, it doesn't happen much now though.
In today's world, I mean, both my children go to St. James, and the reason we had them, that there was Sanskrit, there was exactly this, every beginning and end, bringing your thought to yourself and taking, bringing that calm and all of that. And we still struggle with screens. Children are drawn into this world of technology, which is supposed to be connecting us, but actually it is disconnecting the world, I feel. And it's a great it's a great hard work for parents to maneuver technology to work for them. Actually, at the moment, sometimes I feel we are working for the technology.
Yeah, this is a very important point. People have allowed the mobile phones, etc., to take over. They have to be strong. Parents have to say, no mobile phone, certainly not at school.
Very hard, David, because it is, sometimes children are traveling on their own. We need to make sure that they are safe.
Yes, you can get phones that just deal with phone calls.
Yeah, but we are tracking them where they are. I hope they are safe. It's all these fears that play into... that play into giving them a smart or a mobile phone. And though the schools don't want them to have them, they turn a blind eye because they don't know what's the answer to keep them safe. So some of them are traveling from far away, like my daughter does, and I want to keep her safe. But I give her that phone, and then a lot of the coursework is on iPad.
Well, I left teaching before this happened, so I haven't got the answers. I haven't had to deal with it face on. I have families that I know very well. Often they're homeschooling, and they don't allow their children to have phones. And these children are far more intelligent that's a sweeping statement, but they often are far brighter than the children who are immersed in all this rubbish. Children, like anyone, will go for what's easiest, and they'll go for what attracts them because of its sometimes because it's horrible. You know, they're fascinated. I think people need to be strong. These things are certainly not good. They are financed to the billions of dollars by these great techno companies in order to trap people's attention. This is what they spend all their money in, finding ways of making children attend with likes and this, that and the other. It's evil. It is simply an evil industry. And this is, a lot of people know this, but they don't necessarily have the strength to say no. I think you have to, I mean, parents have always known you can't always be popular with your children. And they'll thank you in the end. I know my mother used to discipline us, and I hated it, but I thank her to the depths of my being now when I look back on the way she brought us up. One has to have courage. That's all I can say, and I'm going to leave it to you because those days are over for me.
I ask that because you taught children.
Yes.
What is it that teaching these languages, I mean in India for example, we have just about 25,000 people, close to less than 25,000, according to the 2022 statistics. I don't have, please correct me if I'm wrong, but let's say by and large 25,000 or maybe 30,000, I don't know now, people speaking Sanskrit.
Oh, right. Oh, yes, not many actually.
Yeah.
Many more 100 years ago. And the same problem with the phones, etc. The children are not going to be interested in Sanskrit if they've got, what's her name, Taylor
Swift.
You know, if they've got a choice and it's up to them and they're sitting in the train on the way home, what are they going to look at?
Should we make Taylor Swift sing Sanskrit?
Well,
I think that might work.
It might do, but I don't think that would work. You have to be, there has to be discipline.
What is going to be lost if Sanskrit is lost?
What's going to be lost is the connection with a whole world, a much bigger world, which is the world of reality. Now, if you go down the techno hole with these masks on, you're going into imaginary worlds. We don't know what those worlds are going to do to us because we've never had this before. It's a very great risk, and reality is what we should be seeking because reality is something that doesn't change.
What has these many years of learning Sanskrit done to your life?
Well, it's given me a firm background that I can rely on and which can lift my sights so that I'm aware, when I want to be, of a much larger world, as large as the whole universe, because it's out of the, well, according to the Sanskrit teaching, it's out of the Vedas, the ancient scriptures, that the universe has sprung. This is a very inspiring understanding that is available, but people aren't aware of it. That in each tradition they had their own scripture at one time, which gave them a sight of this larger world.
You're not born Hindu, but you gravitated to this philosophy more than
Well,
the
I
others.
wouldn't call myself Hindu now, but I love Sanskrit. I think Sanskrit is much older than Hindu. It's thousands of years old, and we know that other languages have somehow come from somewhere around Sanskrit. So at one time, it seems to me, mankind was much more united and all spoke one language or a very similar language, and then spread out, which is the way of things.
Of course, which is the way of things. What do you feel religion-wise?
Religion-wise, I am a very strange person because I am very religious, but I don't go to any church or synagogue or temple. I once got baptized into Christianity because I wanted to worship, and I did worship at the altar, but I found, apologize to anybody listening if I'm insulting them, but I'm not wanting to, but I found that in the church very few people were interested in Jesus Christ. One lady would be interested in looking after the flowers, another person would be interested in another aspect, but they didn't want to talk about Jesus. There was no, they just carried it from their childhood in their families, and I think that's true of many religions.
So what is your faith what is faith for you?
What is faith? Well, because I read the Gita so much, I don't want to say believe in, I'm very reverent towards the Lord Krishna. But I don't have a particular view of him with a peacock feather and all the rest of it. That to me is superficial. There's a reality in the universe, and I think more than anything I try to live in a way that's worthy of that reality.
What is that? What is that living like?
That living is truthful, it's quiet. Well, that's a big question. I'd like to sit for half an hour and think before answering, but it is a reality for me. And also, it's a life of restraint. Don't do that. Don't say that. There has to be restraint, and restraint is not the flavour of the month in our civilization at the moment.
Oh God, don't becomes freedom infringement on the
That's right.
freedom of speech.
I do what I like. No one tells me what to do. Well, there is a universe which has given you life, and that universe has laws. And it is our responsibility to find out what those laws are and to live according to them. I can say that and believe it.
Okay. What is it in Gita that most appeals to you and has worked for you practically in your life?
Well, I'll give you an example. In the 16th chapter of the Gita, there are a list. It starts off with a list of, I think it's 24, something like that, divine treasures. The first one is fearlessness. So it goes, Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhi. Sattva Sangshuddhi is purity of heart. Now, one definition I've read of purity of heart is when the welfare of someone else is of equal value and importance to you as your own welfare. That's not the way we tend to think. So, then, well, there are 23 other divine treasures, and that occasionally, every few months, I will read through that list, and as a checklist, how am I doing with silence? How am I doing with generosity? How am I doing with restraint, with lack of ego? This lovely list of divine treasures are a guide to life. And there are many other parts of the Gita which I find equally valuable. It's very practical.
How do you do this checklist in daily life?
Well, you sit down, probably you close your eyes, and well, if you're reading it, you don't close your eyes. I happen to know the list off by heart, so I close my eyes, I go through the verses which have these treasures in, and I reflect on how I'm doing.
Okay, how do
Lavina.
we make Gita relevant today? How
Well,
do we tell them this is practical for you follow in the modern life?
Well, the Gita is practical. It teaches you to follow a life of action. It says you have to keep acting. You don't go and retire into a forest. Keep acting, but you act without attachment to the results of action. That is a very important teaching in the Gita. It calls them the fruits of action. So you're not looking towards what you can get out of everything. You're looking towards what you can put into it and how well you can perform the action and how you can help other people with it, but still, whether it's success or failure, you still remain calm and equal-minded so that you don't agitate yourself inwardly.
When everything for you is going wrong and you're asked to just keep performing and doing your karma, your action, where do you get the strength to do that while detaching yourself from the outcome? Because that's outcome. Okay, I am going to reach the end of that tunnel. I am going to not drown. I am going to get that job. My bank account will have some money. This is the outcome that's giving me hope for my action. But you're telling me, don't be connected to that outcome. Where am I getting my hope from?
Don't be affected by that outcome. Yes. To the greatest advancements. So that I might have wanted a young lady to marry me. And she might have refused. But then the next one around became my lifelong wife that I've never regretted. And that's happened, for instance.
Possibly to say to yourself that what didn't happen, or what happened was, what happens is always for the good.
Yes,
So
I think that's a sort of faith that luckily I have had and has proved right.
Where has your faith come from?
Well, it's from the reading of these scriptures. It's from the example of great people that you read about in history and people that you might meet. And then it's always good to have someone to go to for advice.
You started seeking and you were unhappy. Are you happy now?
Yes, there are elements in my character that make me unhappy. And I'm sure we all have that. And not until I reach the very end of the road do I expect to have defeated all those elements that I'd rather be without. But I have a purpose in life. I know where I'm going, I know what I'm fighting for, and I may fight badly one day and well in another day, but it has meaning for me. And that's where I started, without any meaning.
Would you want to share that with us, or you don't want to share
Well,
that
the
purpose?
meaning is the meaning you find in the Gita and in other...
Your personal, what is the purpose that you are driven towards?
Well, I think I'd put it very simply. I want to be able to hold my head up and know that I've behaved as a human being should. And I see elements in myself that go in the opposite direction. And it's a daily battle to find the right road and keep to it.
And Gita and Sanskrit both help you doing that.
Absolutely, they're reminders.
Brilliant.
And they tell the story of what I could be.
You're doing brilliantly. You definitely are inspiring, if I may say that.
Well, I'm happy that you said it.
So people who want to learn from you, how can they? How do they reach you, David?
Well, I'm always ready to give Sanskrit lessons. I prefer it if several people come at once, then it can be much cheaper. My details should be underneath this YouTube clip. Just get in touch with me by email, and then we can discuss when and where and how. And I'd love to meet anybody who's interested in learning Sanskrit. The course is the course basically that I taught the children, so it's not technically difficult. It is a simple course, and people, even adults, have enjoyed it very much.
And anyone can come in this class of any age.
If
anything.
they're willing to work, there is weekly work. You won't learn Sanskrit without a bit of learning going on.
There are no free lunches. You have
That's
to work
right.
hard.
No free lunches. Not even Sanskrit free lunches.
You have to work hard to learn. Thank you so much. I'm sure and I hope you get lots and lots of students and we are able to preserve Sanskrit.
Exactly. Thank you.
On that note, may I just tell you that we have a section called High Five India, in which I ask you 5 questions, quick ones,
Right.
and then you can give answers if you want to, if you can, and then we do a
Right.
high five in the end.
Well, that's nice. Right. So,
That is the only reward, so get
so
ready.
is that a
for
left
that.
hand, or you're using your left hand?
I will use I can use right hand
Right.
too.
I'm happy with that. Right.
Okay, yeah, see, a real who follows the Indian text would speak. Okay, so high five it is. What is India for you in one word, or you can take one sentence also?
Well, I think India to me is the Sanatana Dharma, the ancient path to wisdom and self-realization. And it has preserved that for thousands of years.
Okay.
I hope it will continue, but I am slightly worried.
And why you worry?
Because of this,
Sanskrit.
the way that the modern world has encroached on every traditional value. I think it's very frightening. I don't think people realize how dangerous that is.
Okay. If Sanskrit were a superhero, what would be its special power?
Power to raise the mind above the superficial into what is much deeper.
Brilliant. Your favorite Sanskrit text? Why? And what is its biggest contribution, you think?
Right, have you guessed? It's the Bhagavad Gita.
Nope.
It's very short. It's full of wisdom in the way that I don't even see in other Sanskrit works. And it's recognized in the tradition as having that special quality. What was the third bit of your question?
Contribution.
Well, its contribution, it's probably the most translated work of a similar length in any language.
But does the translation do justice to it, or one must learn Sanskrit to read it?
No, you're quite right in what you just said. Secondly, that no translation does justice to it, although even the translations are full of wisdom. But no, learning it in the Sanskrit, and it's no end to, I'm still teaching it every week, the Bhagavad Gita, and I discover new things every week, and how one verse connects with another, this sort of thing.
You may or may not answer that, but is there any favorite character of the stories that you have read in Gita or elsewhere? And if you could meet them, what would you ask?
Well, that's a lovely question. There are all these great sages, but I often think about this. I think if I met, let's say, Yajnavalkya, the sage that used to have long discussions with King Janaka, if I met him, would I be tongue-tied? Would I dare to ask questions? Would I feel completely belittled? I don't know. I don't know.
But you would like to meet him?
Yes, in a book.
Okay. If Sanskrit was lost to the world, what will the world lose?
Well, it would lose this connection. There are other great books. In the Chinese, there's the Tao Te Ching. In the Greek and European, there's the New Testament, and then the Old Testament. There are many such books. I think Sanskrit is perhaps more powerful because of the language itself, and these are ways that we can learn about something which is going to last beyond our human life. Otherwise our life is just a little longer than an ant's life, and it comes and goes in the same way. But I think actually, potentially, our lives are much more noble than that.
Mm. Is there any happiness mantra that you have?
Well, if you learn, for instance, to meditate, you can just, if you're in a difficult position, you can just let your mind rest on that mantra, and it brings with it its own peace. No, I'll leave it at that.
We can do a high five.
Oh,
that
right.
was a no.
Yes, that's it.
We did it. Brilliant. David, do you want to leave us with one Sanskrit shlok that really inspires or drives you, or when you are sad, you say this to yourself?
Right. There is a very, very ancient prayer which says this. I'll say it in Sanskrit, and then I'll say the English with each Sanskrit bit. It's not long. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityur ma mritangamaya. Asato ma sadgamaya, from untruth lead me to truth. Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, from darkness lead me to light. Mrityur ma mritangamaya, from death lead me to immortality.
What a beautiful space to leave.
And there you are, you have the whole of human purpose.
We got there in the end. We got them this question and the quest as to what is our purpose. Actually, it is us and beyond. And if one was to connect it with this truth, I think people and world will be a much calmer place. Exactly where I am while talking to David. This is what he has taught me today, and it is such an incredible contribution to my today that he can't imagine. But thank you so much. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
David.
Lavina.
Thank you. It's been an absolute inspiring conversation, and I want to have many more such. So please write into me and tell me if there's anyone that you want me to go out and talk to, and if you want to tell me your story, I am here to listen to you. Thank you for watching and listening India, a story in the making. Thank you.
Listen to my podcast audio on Apple, Spotify, BingePods, or wherever you get your podcast from. And watch the video of the podcast on my YouTube channel, Lavina Tandon. New episodes are out every Sunday.